Dallas, I don't feel too well.
Welcome to episode 15 of Dictate, Dissect, and Discuss. This will be part 2 of No Right Turn. We will start on number 18. How to hold productive community meetings. Time is everyone's most valuable thing. Wasting people's time with dull, long, unnecessary, and unproductive meetings will cause anger for wasting their time and for taking them away from what they wish they had done instead of coming to the community meeting. Always ask yourself, should this meeting be held? Is it necessary? The reason to hold a meeting is to plan action. Your community group exists for action, not meetings. It is very easy to slip into the opposite, meeting because it's the first week of the month, for example. In the words of one of my favorite bands, A Perfect Circle, time is money and money's time. Note that people who are coming to the meeting from work, whether in person or virtually, are going to be exhausted. They have childcare, cleaning, dinner to cook, schoolwork, etc. If you're making them come to a meeting that's unproductive, they'll only put up with it for so long before leaving outright or finding excuses to squeeze in other activities in place of the meetings. If you haven't planned something or taken action during the course of a meeting, then there was no use in having the meeting in the first place. This is also why meeting on a set schedule is not as productive as meeting when there is a pertinent need to, or in an emergency, whatever the case may be. With COVID, in-person meetings should be even more valuable and only conducted when necessary. (19) If you have an item on the agenda with the title Any Other Business, get people into the habit of telling you beforehand what topic they will raise under that agenda item. Never make people feel like they're a second-class citizen or that they aren't a priority. It doesn't matter if you're the leader of the organization or not. If people see that their concerns aren't being heard or voiced, then a multitude of avoidable situations can occur. They can incessantly request the floor and derail the agenda. They can get fed up with the lack of due attention paid to their ideas and leave. Or in a more extreme example, they can badmouth the group for its lack of support towards the opinions of others, which will lead to bad publicity for the group as a whole. Decisions. Have your own proposal ready for each agenda item. Never have an item on the agenda if you have no idea what the answer is in terms of action to be done by whom, when, and how much it will cost. In a democratically run meeting, the two groups have rights. The majority on the topic has rights and so does the minority. It is the right of the majority to end the debate and move on to the next item on the agenda. I disagree with these two brackets. Firstly, I don't think the chairperson or chairpersons needs to know every minute detail of every proposal or plan for action. In a discussion, there are people who know the answer and people that don't. Sometimes you need to feel out a plan before putting it into writing or practice. If a chairperson is unsure of the way forward, other members of the autonomous group can brainstorm ideas. Secondly, I do not agree that the majority have the inherent and eternal right, in a social sense, to dictate the ways, means, and timing of the meeting. If there are disagreements, you cannot just shuffle away the dissenters and say, okay, we have more people on our side and we're moving on without you. That will lead to people either agreeing with the majority out of convenience and a desire for authority, or it will anger and alienate the ever-shifting minority. Allow for orientation and network locally. 21. Offer to accompany people on the first visit. Make sure groups are networked locally. Have they got the key contacts in regeneration teams, counselors, Sure Start, etc. If in doubt, visit. Go to see the group in action doing the activities. Insist on being invited to meetings, even if just as an observer. Be prepared to go at a weekend or in the evenings. AGMs are also a very good indicator of how a group is operating. Go to them as often as you can. Learn about immigration issues. Immigration legislation is constantly changing. Try to stay updated through websites and newsletters. Get good signposting information in your office for legal centers and emergency help for asylum seekers. Partner up with specialist refugee support agencies. Run training courses at the venue of a refugee-specific agency that refugee community organizations are familiar with. Work with specialist development workers to tailor courses to refugee groups' needs. First and foremost, take extra caution when visiting the house, hostel, hotel, apartment, etc. of a refugee or migrant, especially if they have confided in you that they are not legally allowed to be in the country. If you know your organization is, let's say, a little more likely to get you in trouble with the law or get you hooked under surveillance by immigration bureaus, and lead officers like ICE right to an immigrant's door. Arrest and deportation are real and very scary issues. I want to also address keeping up with news and policies regarding immigration, especially if you are A, in a city or state where immigration laws are set to change, or B, live near the Texas-Mexico border. And lastly, you'll need a dedicated number to an immigration attorney in case things get too legal for your organization to handle. (22) Attend refugee social events. Take the time to attend social events. You will get to know people better, learn more, and gain trust. Social events can also be an opportunity for refugee community organizations to organize. Don't expect everything to be done in formal meetings, so attending social events can be essential if you are supporting the development of a group. And this is basically the same thing as the previous note. Get involved, especially if your autonomous group has something in common with anti-deportation advocacy, but be sure to protect the safety of refugees in your group above all. Building anti-fascist communities. 23. Anti-fascists have historically focused on ridiculing fascist adherence to biological racism. Biological racism has been publicly repudiated by all elements on the electoral right, either genuinely or tacitly. We must organize our communities on a longer timetable. Biological racism, phrenology, miscegenation, all of these are hallmarks of a fascist, full stop. Challenging these axioms makes for a long and hard battle, and I would run a counterclaim to the write-up and say that, at least in the US right now, the Republican Party especially has become overrun with a huge amount of biological racists behind closed doors. These are the types of people who think black people need to do less crime, but can't because they're predisposed to violence and crime in their DNA for some reason. The bell curve in and of itself is a treatise on this very concept disguised as academia. Our police force is full of officers who use disproportionate force and surveillance on POC, and judges who hand down harsher sentences for POC, especially when their crimes concern drugs. If we are to see meaningful gains, we will need to strike at the very fabric of internalized racism, and that comes with making systemic yet positive changes to eliminate poverty, mental health disparities, and promote close-knit communities and support networks. '24. We recognize that the children of migrants have done more to defeat fascists than any anti-fascist movement. I'd like to highlight this sentence here for a small dissection. By merely existing, a child of immigrants proves the biological racist, or the fascist, dead wrong. Migrant children are born citizens of the country, an identity alone that boils the blood of these people. They go to school and learn how to fight back when they get older. They get jobs that ensure others won't be disenfranchised like them. They become teachers and lawyers and doctors and more, innervating the wonderful fabric of a society and helping it grow strong. They are no more predisposed to crime, stupid, violent, or manipulative as anyone. They have no crime but their birth. And when they win, they are authentically winning, because their wins are wins in their fight for survival. It's not a game to them, it's life in its truest sense. '25. We also need groups not to work with the police. The police have a shameful history of infiltrating and smearing anti-racist community campaigns, most infamously including the family and friends of Stephen Lawrence. The police protect fascists and escort them into our communities. Through their National Extremist Unit, they hold intelligence on almost 9,000 people on their database, including legal firms and radicals like Jack Straw or perhaps Occupy Times readers. The police exist to protect the racist status quo, not assist us in challenging it. They are not our allies, but quite the opposite. If you don't recognize some of these people, places, and terminology, I remind my listeners again that this is a guide written by UK anarchists, so if you're from America, for example, these will not be people you recognize probably. Anyway, I just wanted to read that note for an example in regards to cop participation and infiltration into social movements. '26. The traditional ideology of anti-fascism, i.e. anyone but the fascist, needs to be abandoned in favor of a new practice, building working-class solidarity through community organizing, which is both principled and consistently anti-fascist and anti-racist. This is a claim that has merit, but can be debated as being too restrictive. Whilst working-class solidarity is a huge must and an asset to the broader anti-fascist movement, cultivating middle-class Americans and people of other nationalities is beneficial, especially so the movement becomes more normalized and culturally sound. It's about simplicity and infiltration. To have a solid foundation, there should be both the focus on the working class's autonomous group identity, as well as integrating middle and even upper middle class folks into the fray to assure them that they are participants in this world building and safety-focused culture of anti-fascism too. And finally, 27. Why burnout is a political and movement issue. There seems to be an attitude that, if I want to burn out, that is up to me. But as we don't work in isolation but in groups, then people's attitudes and mental health affect the people around them. People who burn out are often the most committed activists. The reasons to work so hard are numerous and growing. This is not meant to be an attack on them, but to argue that we need to pace ourselves and look after ourselves and those who we are working with. They are often the kind of people who pick up the work that nobody else is doing, thereby overloading themselves to the breaking point. People don't usually burn out overnight, and it takes some time, and during that time, they can be difficult to work with, disruptive, depressive, and making their recovery time longer. Perhaps the most important point in this entire guide: never, ever assume that your solo burnout or overwork or care fatigue will not sink the entire ship you're on somehow. You are not an island. Nobody is, especially not nowadays where we need tight-knit communities more than ever. Just because you're a part of a decentralized group with no hierarchies doesn't mean you get to lone wolf your way into political action. Burnout is so severe in nonprofits in particular because people care so much about something outside themselves that they don't regard their own ability to be healthy as a liability or asset. Do not wait until you burn out to take a break. The world won't end, and you aren't failing anyone for not coming to a few meetings. That's just life. Give yourself some slack and don't be selfish. People appreciate you enough without picking up extra work. You're all good. Any job worth doing is worth doing well, so commit to doing your best only when you can. And side note, I don't mean to say that taking some time off for yourself is selfish. It certainly isn't. But being in a bad mood constantly, starting fights, being disruptive, and talking badly about people is selfish. Don't take the entire ship down with you because you're burnt out. Alright, and that will be the end of this episode and of No Right Turn. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you guys very soon. Goodbye!
3, 8, 2, 7, 7.